Commissioner. Good to see you. This year, the IRS has had to make some choices and has had to cut taxpayer services. Is that agreed?
Well, we had to make choices across the board. We've cut enforcement services, we've cut taxpayer services, and we've cut support for information technology. We've tried to balance that across all three areas, which are the discretion areas we have. We have no choice about implementing statutory mandates. We have no choice about trying to make sure the filing season runs smoothly. So the only areas where we have discretion are in those three areas, and over 70% of our budget is personnel. So when we're cut, as we were last year by $350 million, we have no choice but to cut personnel, and we try to do that in a balanced way.
So do you make across-the-board cuts, or are your cuts made selectively based on?
We sat down with all the senior executives and looked for areas where we could find efficiencies. We are saving over $200 million a year over time in the efficiencies we've already found. I take the Chairman's point. We need to be as efficient as we can. We need to be careful stewards of the money that taxpayers give us to spend. So I think it's always fair comment for us to work with GAO, the IG, with the oversight committees to say, where can we be more efficient? But when we made the cuts, we did not make them across the board, except for the fact we had no choice but to say we would not replace anyone departing. That, in other words, we would have no hiring when people left. We have 1,000 people right now with requests in to retire. We won't replace those people. So part of our attrition is by wherever people are going to retire, because, again, we have to cut personnel.
So if you have a retiree that retires in a part of the service that has nothing to do with customer service, do you retain that position in that department and not fill it there, or do you shift resources over to the service department?
We basically, as people are leaving because of the constraints, aren't replacing them anywhere except for emergencies. So in other words, if we lose someone in IT who's cybersecurity, we'll replace them. There's an application process. Anybody across the board, if they want to replace a position, they have to let us know. The biggest area where we have discretion is that during filing season, we hire up to 10,000 seasonal employees. And we usually hire them for 4 to 8 or 12 months. This year, because of the constraints on the budget, we hired those people, but in fact had to cut back the length of time they were available to provide service. So again, our constraints are, as I say, over 70% of our budget is personnel. So when we take a significant hit, it's going to show up with fewer people someplace. And we've tried again to analyze where is it those cuts are going. But again, as a general matter this year, because we didn't get the budget cuts until December, our position has been wherever people left, we didn't replace them.
So when our taxpayer advocate in her 2014 report basically says that she does not believe that you are spending your money in a smart way, you would disagree with that?
Well, I would disagree. I work very closely with the taxpayer advocate. Last year, every year we sit down with her and look at her recommendations and figure out where we can make improvements. I've last year and this year told her, give me all your recommendations that don't cost money, because we don't have any money. And we've actually adopted those. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights was one that we worked on jointly. I do think that we disagree. Her view, for instance, is that last year we quit preparing tax returns for people in our taxpayer assistance centers. And she objected to that, said that was an important service. It is an important service. We were only preparing 68,000. We shifted those to our 12,000 VITA sites, which this year prepared 3.4 million returns for taxpayers.
She is an advocate for additional funding.
She's an advocate for funding.
But she says that the IRS does not have a clear rationale for how it allocates its budget. And I think what I read into that is that while she is in favor of giving additional funds, she is not yet convinced that when those funds are given, that they are applied properly and they are applied in the right place, because she doesn't think you have a clear-cut vision for that.
Since she made those comments, we've demonstrated to her and showed her the information of where we do customer service surveys, where we analyze the flow of work. where we make decisions as to where, if we're going to lower service in an enforcement center or lower service in a walk-in center, we actually analyze that. But it's an important point that we need to be analyzing effectively and efficiently where we're going. GAO has raised the same issue. They need, and everybody says, and we agree, that wherever we can, we need to be as efficient as we can. But overall, GAO, the Inspector General, the Taxpayer Advocate, and the Oversight Board have all, independently of the IRS, said we are substantially underfunded. No matter how efficient we get, there are not enough resources to provide the service, the enforcement, and the information technology services that are necessary.
Mr. Lewis is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.